Welcome back to PCT Insights, and we're here today to talk about unit pricing errors and, more importantly, how to avoid them. And we need to talk about this because we are observing an increase in unit pricing incidents across our portfolio of funds. The implications of these errors should not be underestimated because they can lead to reputational, financial and regulatory impacts for us all. Our job as responsible entity is to protect investors, protect funds and protect reputations, both yours and ours. Prevention is 100% the best approach when it comes to unit pricing errors. So today I have with me two experts in what it takes to develop the robust operating model needed to prevent such errors. So welcome to David Shootrim, KONU Director, and Paul Topher, KONU Partner at KONU, a specialist investment and wealth management consulting firm. Together, you have substantial experience across managed fund operations, which makes you ideal to talk about this subject. So I'd like to begin with the bad news first. And over the past year, we've seen firsthand some examples of some very costly and very time-consuming unit pricing errors. So in your experience, what are the implications of unit pricing errors for a fund?
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Consistent with you, our view at KONU is that the frequency of unit pricing errors continues. We put this down to three broad categories. So the first being that there's an increasing volume of unit prices that need to be calculated, the time constraints that exist within that environment, and then the complexity of instruments are all placing increasing challenges on the teams responsible for unit pricing. And secondly, even though there's been some great technology improvements, we still see that spreadsheets and manual processes exist, and which for things such as specialized fee calculations, and when you have spreadsheets in the mix, you're going to have some inherent risks. And then thirdly, some of the models around unit pricing are becoming incredibly complex, and as a result, you've got multiple teams and multiple interaction points throughout the process, and sometimes things can fall through the cracks, resulting in process-related errors. And in my experience, the worst types of errors are those that remain undetected or dormant for a long period of time, because when they do surface, the effort and resources involved to go back and work out how to resolve that issue can be significant. The financial costs, as you said, can be extreme, and we've seen recent examples where that goes into the millions. And then, like you said as well, the reputational damage is very broad and wide-reaching. And it's incredibly important then that organisations do have the right operating model in place around unit pricing, because the consequences are significant, and so it's something that does need to be taken very seriously.
And I guess the good news is errors are preventable. And so, Paul, in the fund operating model where the unit pricing is outsourced to a third-party provider, and that is our model, can you talk me through how funds can identify where the problems lie and the diagnostic process that our investment managers should use or should take in order to address the risks that lead to these errors?
So, Vicky, the first thing to flag here is that managers can outsource the responsibility for unit pricing, but not the accountability. And so it's fair to say that errors are likely to happen. And so what is the right outsourcing model that can be put in place to prevent errors from arising? And so the first thing, or the things that we look at are threefold. There's people, process, and technology. And so when it comes to technology, there's some really good solutions out there today that help with the validation exercise. But we are aware that they can be cost prohibitive or barriers to be able to do that. So coming up with a technology solution that can offer business value beyond just unit pricing is the optimal outcome. Alternatively, you could look to leverage your service provider's technology and their capability. Now, when it comes to looking at process and validating the steps involved in a model, it's important to look at, well, what's taking place on a daily basis versus what is taking place on a monthly or periodic basis. Important to look at the timing of when the unit price review is done. Is it happening pre-release of the unit price or post-release? And then things like fund changes and understanding how they're being implemented into the unit pricing process. And then the thing that could be really helpful is if the investment manager can independently estimate their own unit price return, then that's a good, robust solution. And then the last thing when it comes to people is looking at their capacity and their capability in their environment and being very clear on the responsibilities. And I always think that the people are the glue that hold the model together.
Yeah. And so, David, Paul has just taken us through that in-depth diagnosis that should take place. And so what comes next? So how does a fund maintain a fit-for-purpose operating model on an ongoing basis?
Thanks, Vicky. In addition to the diagnostic assessment, a fund health check is a fundamental tool for maintaining an operating model. Examples would include undertaking a regular review and interrogation of the base and performance fee calculation, having regard to both timeliness and accuracy. We would also recommend doing an ongoing review of the key unit pricing accruals and other balance sheet items to confirm their validity. Secondly, we'd expect to see an operative provision reconciliation between the unit pricing mechanics and the key fund artefacts such as a PDS and the fund constitution. And finally, it's very important to have a regular review and update of the key policy documents, including the valuation and unit pricing policy documents, having regard to the changing nature of the instruments and the complexity of those instruments.
Okay, so thanks for that detailed insight. So just to quickly summarise, you'd advise oversight functions in terms of people, process, technology, so that be assessed and be regulatory challenged and then overlaid with a health check. So do you recommend that for all sized funds and for all levels of fund complexity?
Yes, that's an interesting question. We absolutely need to look at the different nature, size and complexity of the different fund managers, and we have to look at how their operating model is configured and what information is available, including their investment book of record, their performance benchmark and other factors, to take that into account. It's certainly not a one size fits all.
Okay. Well, thanks again, David and Paul. I'm sure our investment managers will find your insights very valuable. So to conclude, our investment managers should have received a letter from us outlining the systems, controls and processes that we'd like you to have in place around unit pricing. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to your client manager in the first instance. And the team at KONU here is also available to assist you where required.